Hi, welcome to Pictures, Noise and Words. I'm Hedgy.
I'm Paz.
And this is a podcast episode. And I'm calling it a podcast episode because I've got more to say than about the song. So this, I'm not sure what I've called this video, but anyway, there's a song by Yes on this called Heart of the Sunrise. But though it's about that, it's about other things as well. Pete has no idea what I'm going to say. Pete and Paz has got no idea because I'm just kind of like, yeah, just relax and I'll just talk to death. So yeah, it's going to be quite wordy this, I suspect, and I'm probably going to go all over the place. And a sort of caveat right before I start, everything I say is from like an English perspective, from a UK perspective, because I'm not an expert on, well, anything really, and I'm certainly not a historian. So this is kind of what I think from what I know from a UK perspective. So what I'm actually going to talk about is what happened to music, really, around the 60s and 70s. So don't rush off, because if you've seen this channel and if you've seen the other songs that are on, we're fairly bang up to date. 99% of the time, it's stuff that's cutting edge, and sometimes, some of the bands on here I think may have even come from the future. And
yeah, we're not digging out Iron Maiden tracks.
Yeah, we're not.
It's amazing.
And we're not playing like some Deep Purple track,
no.
and saying if you don't like this, you're wrong. That sort of thing. And in fact, for myself, I'm not much of a classic rock fan. I don't own any Led Zepp albums. I don't own any Deep Purple albums. I don't own any Black Sabbath albums. That's it. There's all our viewership gone. They've all just unsubscribed. And it's not that I don't appreciate them, and it's not that I don't understand what they did for music, which is kind of what I'm about to talk about. It's just that I was a child at the time in the 70s, and some bands you listen to, some bands as a child, you tend to just get what's on the radio. So the fact that I was listening to Yes as a child is a little odd in itself, but it's something that I brought with me, and I like prog rock. So, but what happened was this song, Heart of the Sunrise, came on, the original from 1971, came on my iPod, and I was listening to it thinking, it's just so clever, this song. There's just so much. I mean, Paz may hate this song. This is not about me saying you must like it or anything like that. This is just me wanting to talk about something that I like. But I was listening to it, and it's like you said a while ago, it's like when we did that albums we think people should hear, because you hear something, you think, I want other people to hear this kind of thing. And it was like that with this song when it came on just, I don't know, a couple of days ago. And then I thought, right, I'll do that. I'll do this song, and I will introduce it to a wider audience or whatever. Not that it's super famous, this song anyway, so it's not like anyone's not going to have heard it. Well, loads of people won't have, but it has a huge audience already. And I started thinking about it, and then I started thinking about the fact that it came out in 1971, and thought, there's a wider conversation here to be had, and this is going to be, it's not going to be many jokes in this, this is going to be pretty kind of, I'm not sure, this might be really boring. It's just stuff that I was thinking about. Because what happened, and like I say, I'm not a historian, and this is UK centric. I cannot speak for what happened in other countries, okay? But in the sort of late 40s, 1940s, you had, out of sort of rhythm and blues and jazz, rock and roll was starting to be born, and then in the 50s, rock and roll cemented itself as a major genre. But at the same time, there was austerity in the UK. I told you there's not going to be a lot of laughs. And Paz is like, where the hell are we going with this? There was austerity, of course. There was the Second World War, and rationing was a thing, and people just didn't have things. And I think a lot of people don't realise that rationing went on to 1954. It's not like the war ended and everyone suddenly had beef and bacon to eat. You know, that it was still rationed right up to the mid-50s. And this is a much more complex conversation than obviously we're going to have here. This is a music channel, but that ended in the 50s. Rock and roll had become an established thing, but it's still born out of the big band sound, rhythm and blues, jazz. And then the 60s happened. And then by the 60s, the austerity was behind them. A new generation was coming in that had more. And people had a lot more freedom. And that came out in the music of the time. So people like the Rolling Stones, you could never have had a band like the Rolling Stones in the 1950s. They probably would have ended up in prison, and I think they did. I think they did get busted a couple of times just trying to play in the 60s, because they were like the anti-Beatles, weren't they? They were like the dirty, the dirty Beatles sort of thing. And then by the end of the 60s, society had changed. But then, society changed, and when you get a big societal change, other things happen because people make music based on their influences and stuff. And a whole generation that perhaps didn't really remember the war anymore were making music. And something else happened as well at the same time. Technology took a huge leap at the end of the 60s and into the 70s because electronics became much more of a thing, or just electricity in instruments, whether it was a great big valve, amplifier or whatever. And instrumentation itself changed. The synthesizer became a thing. You needed an electrical degree to use one, because you had to patch the whole thing together manually, didn't you? I mean, I'm not an expert in anything, but new instrumentation was coming out, new ways of recording. Just technology was changing music. Society was changing at the same time. And out of all that was born the music sort of revolution that happened in the 70s. And in fact, this album, Fragile, by Yes, they had a keyboard player called Tony Kaye, I think his name was. And when they wanted to make this album, they wanted to start introducing stuff like synthesizers, because they're a progressive band, and they wanted to start experimenting with this new stuff that was coming out. And their keyboard player at the time was a pianist, and played like the Hammond organ, and he refused. He's like, I'm not playing with that. I'm not quoting him here, but it was like he didn't want to move on to the synthesizer age that was appearing, so they fired him. And Rick Wakeman came, and anyone who knows Yes or knows about prog rock will have heard of Rick Wakeman. But Rick Wakeman, at the time when he came to Yes in 1971, was already a well-known person. He was a classically trained pianist who was a well-known session musician, and he played in a band whose name has completely escaped me, but you would have heard of them. He was already an established guy, Rick Wakeman, but he was interested in all of this new fangled jiggery-pokery of synthesizers. And in the 70s, if you've ever seen pictures of keyboard players, like on big sort of stadium concerts and stuff, they've got like 17 keyboards around them. And Rick Wakeman used to have he'd be stood in a square of and there'd be like 3 layers high all around him, and he's like, there's loads of famous shots of him, literally one arm over here and one arm over here playing different keyboards at the same time and everything. And that won't happen again, I don't think, until something big enough changes music again. And it can't be just that someone invents a new kind of guitar or something. It was all born. This is my theory, by the way. I'm not, like I say, I haven't done a heck of a lot of research, and please stop me if you think I'm talking nonsense. But society changed, but technology changed at the same time, and it allowed people a lot more freedom. Because even if I'm sure there were people in the 1940s who had an idea of, we should play more, we should go in this direction or whatever. Society wasn't ready to go in that direction. But the 60s happened, and like I say, austerity was over, and people changed societally, and music changed with it. And one of the reasons I'm saying this is because it was just been swimming around in my head because I was thinking about it too much. But But the other thing is, it's like context for this song, because bear in mind, this song was made in 1971, so they're literally just coming into that era of their experimentation. Because the 70s, you've got like, well, I'm not going to name obviously everyone, but you've got Genesis, who in the early 70s were just doing amazing experimental stuff with Peter Gabriel at the head. You've got you've got Pink Floyd, who couldn't be more famous. You've got these bands, and lots of bands I'm not going to mention. And the thing about it is, because it changed so much and changed music so much, you still hear it in a band that came out last week, and you hear them playing, you think, oh, that's really clever, and then you think, what does it remind me of? It reminds me of this Genesis song from 1972, or where you think, oh yeah, that reminds me of that. And that's because it was such a seismic shift, I think. So you think about 2112, the album by Rush, it was massive, it was an event. It changed how people made albums. And yes, we're one of the sort of pioneers of that stuff. Great musicians, but clearly sort of they landed at the right time, if you like, and they were kind of visionary. And bear in mind, these people would have been born in the 50s, maybe even in the late 40s. Not sure exactly how they were by this point, but say in the 50s. So they missed the austerity bit, but at that time, there was no YouTube to go and learn how to play the guitar like some rock musician or whatever. You basically had to take lessons and listen to a lot of records and kind of build your own thing, didn't you? So if you go and learn from a music teacher who's probably 20 years older than you are, you're learning blues and you're learning jazz and whatever. And it comes out in the music, so you can still hear. I'm going to play the live version of this song just so you've got something to look at. And it's a good recording. It's not perfect, but it's the best one I could find. But if you're interested in hearing the original, it is subtler. There are a lot more subtle elements, and you can hear them, especially if you get it's been remastered. So if you listen to the remastered version of this, you can hear all of the stuff that's going on, and you can hear little undertones you can hear the jazz, and you can hear the different things. Do you know this song at all, Heart of the Sunrise? Probably not.
Might recognise it.
I mean, admittedly, it's pretty long, but it is prog rock. I used to always sort of have this little joke in my head that by the time a prog rock band had got through the intro, your average pop song was over. So by the time someone starts singing, your average pop song was over, and that's the case of this song. This is definitely one where it's like 4 minutes before anyone sings, just the intro. So try and bear that in mind. Though this is from 2003, this is the songs from 1971. They're just coming out of the 60s, and society has literally just had a seismic shift, and new instrumentation and new recording methods and new technology all around, probably better microphones and all of this stuff as the electronic age or the electric age or whatever you want to call it really started to change things.
And the good thing about prog rock, they weren't doing it to write hit singles.
God no.
And the same with any kind of heavy band like your Deep Purples and your Led Zeppes and your Black Sabbaths
and then your slightly less known ones like Uriah Heep and Camel and bands like. In fact, you said just about a week ago that you were listening to some Camel.
Yeah.
And you could just hear.
It was Opeth. Basically.
It was Opeth. Yeah, you can hear Opeth. Yeah.
not as well produced Opeth.
I mean, there is that downside to the 70s that they didn't have the super sharp digital recording that we have now, but in a way it gives it some charm.
But it sounds authentic because they're writing it because that's what they want to do and progress into an experiment rather than writing to a checklist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is
it makes you wonder whether if there was a new wave of something different, whether it would survive now to actually become a thing, like because prog rock took over for a while, just took over the 70s, and there was a backlash to it in the 80s, but you know, it became so prevalent, and I think that's because you had a real sort of record buying public.
It was still records, wasn't it? But the change.
You didn't need the instant gratification that you need now, I think.
But there was a change of the way music was marketed. It wasn't singles anymore. So the prog rock bands that wrote 10-minute opuses like this came at the same time when they started making actual long play albums. Before that, in the 60s, it was all singles.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think
singles with no middle. You might not be old. You're not that much younger than me. But do you remember singles? They had no middle. They just had a hole about that big in the middle. You had to have a little adapter in your thing to play them. Yeah.
So I think those two coming together, helped, and because I think eventually albums started overtaking singles.
Yeah, and they would just really say single to say there's an album to buy.
Yeah.
More than anything. Here's a single, so now you know there's an album to go and get, kind of thing.
And I think we have shifted back to what it, in my opinion, in pop music anyway, we've shifted back to the single.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even though singles aren't really a thing, it's more of a single download. A band will come up, or an artist will release one song, and everyone will just grab that and download it or play it on Spotify. It's less about the album now.
I think pop albums, and I'm certainly no expert in pop music, but they're just made of singles, so they release them.
Because people make their own playlists, which is basically the same as getting 10 singles and piling it up onto your top loading.
I hope they didn't slide when they landed.
Yeah.
You kids. What you don't know is singles used to come with a ridged circle, so that when they landed on each other, the ridges would lock into each other, because you used to land on top of each other and keep playing. And the ridges on the single would lock in, and so that it turned. And every now and again, some singles just didn't have them, and the needle would land, and the record would slide on the one underneath and not play properly. See, you got it easy. And they always had a B-side that they had to come up with, and all of that sort of stuff. But this, for me, I'm trying not to have a nostalgia trip. I'm just trying to think. I think what it is I'm trying to say, bear in mind when you listen to this, where it came from, I think, more than anything, which to me makes this song a bit amazing for me. About that, and I know people nowadays are coming up with amazing new stuff and everything, but there's just something about this, and it's part of my childhood. So it for me personally, obviously, to you it's probably just going to sound like an old song, whereas to me, I probably know every note of this, having listened to it for the last 45 years or something. So this song is literally 48 years old now. Criminy. So
what you're saying that?
Yeah, what am I saying? Please help me.
before this, there wasn't much for them to be influenced by to create this. Whereas you got modern day prog. So if we wanted to write some prog music now, I've got 48 years of
stuff to go back on and say. And you can, nowadays you could say, it's easy with hindsight to say, well, prog rock is, you've got long songs, you've got timing changes, you've got different passages, you've got different tempos, you've got phases in the song where it'll go one place and it'll go another, and then it might come back to that place later on, and all of that sort of thing. You can say all that because we've got 40 years of hindsight. But if you think at the time, what were they building on? They've got their blues and their jazz, and jazz was pretty experimental, of course, and has been. I'm no expert on jazz, really, really, really not. But jazz was pretty experimental. But what prog did, and which is why it was called prog, was they set out to progress music into new avenues, I think, and of course they were all. You couldn't be in a band in the early 70s without being a serious musician, I don't think, because especially in like a prog band, because they're going to hit you with, all of these timing changes. Dream Theater always quote back, they covered this song, Dream Theater, because they recognise where they're standing on the shoulders of giants, as they say. And I'm sure Yes would say, Well, yeah, they were listening to. They were just standing on the shoulders of the people who came before them. You know, the big. And it's too far back for me to start naming anyone, but I'm sure they were the same thing, because it is all kind of an evolution. But I think because of the things I said, you know, because of what happened to society at the time, what happened to technology at the time, it was a big, the 70s and the very late 60s and the 70s, or certainly the first half of the 70s, everything went, you know, to a different level, because it could, and not just because somebody wanted to write longer songs, but because the time was right and the technology allowed it, and synthesizers were invented. So, you know, Rick Wakeman, the keyboard player, is very famous for using the pipe organ sound, you know, the big church organ kind of sound. So synthesizers allowed him to do that. And you can hear on the original recording of this, you can hear that it's kind of a synthesizer version, because it was early days. You know, they were literally programming them and plugging cables in to make these sounds, and you know, messing with oscillators and all of that. You know, they would literally have like a screen with the waveform on it, and they would be tweaking it until they got the right waveform to get the right noise out of it. So, and that sort of adds to the charm. But if you think about it, before that, if someone said, "You know what sound good here? A big pipe organ." What are you going to do? You've got to go to some cathedral and literally, you know, try and record the thing. So it allowed sounds that never existed before, like synthesizer sounds, but also allowed sounds that you want but you couldn't have. So you could have a keyboard that was a grand piano 1 minute and something else the next, and something else the next. This is early days, so they still had like a dozen different keyboards to do all this stuff live, but in the studio it opened up a whole new sort of set of possibilities for them. And I think, and that's why I like, one of the reasons I like it, plus they made great music, that helps too, of course, and that's one of the reasons I like it, is that it was a shift. I can sort of remember the 70s, sort of, I was quite young, and I can remember all the hoo-ha when a new album came out, you know, and because it was my friend's father who had all the Yes albums, and I used to hear them when I went around to my mate's house, and it just kind of, this was the thing that kind of opened my eyes to music, because before that it was Alvin Stardust singing My Cuckoo on the radio or whatever. It was whatever your parents listened to, which in my case was Ella Fitzgerald on my dad's side, and I don't know, Julio Iglesias on my mum's side, you know, and then whatever came on the radio, which was...
Whatever was on Top of the Pops as well.
Yeah, whatever was on Top of the Pops, yeah. So if you want a rock band, it was Slade or someone like that.
Don't diss the Slade.
Singing Merry Christmas or Wizard or whatever, you know. So, Yes really kind of is what set me on the road to thinking about music in not, you know what I mean, more than just the thing that you hear on the radio. It became a thing. So I'll play this anyway. So this is pretty long, admittedly, and this is live, and this is from 2003. So what's that? This is 42 years after the song. Is that right?
No.
32 years. 32 years after, yeah, too many fingers. This is 32 years after they made the song originally. And like I say, if you go and listen to the remastered version of this and listen to the song that they recorded, it's more subtle than this and has a lot more going on that's easily graspable. But this is obviously much more interesting, and it's a good recording. So, yeah. Hang on. Okay. Everyone's just going to write in underneath, yeah, shit.
arms all around me. You're lost on a wave, but you're dreaming. Dream on to the heart of the sunrise. Sharp distance. How can the wind with so many around me feel lost in the city? Lost in your eyes as you hurry by, counting the broken ties they decide. Love comes to you, and then after, dream on to the heart of the sunrise. You're lost on a wave, but you're dreaming. Dream on to the heart of the sunrise. Short distance. How can the wind with its arms all around me? Short distance. How can the wind with so many around me feel lost in the city?
So, I've got my entire lifetime of rose-coloured spectacles on, which are now this thick. so I wonder what it sounds like nowadays to someone who's never heard it before.
Oh, yes, could be.
Yeah.
It was alright.
It was alright.
Yeah. But the thing is, I've seen that kind of stuff done quite a lot. I think it had to be, at the time, I could fully appreciate somebody doing that. I think, it'd be amazing. Spectacle as well. But now so it's sort of been saturated a little bit, hasn't it, the whole genre. So I think, yeah. It was alright. It's not my cup of tea, must admit. Not enough edginess. Not enough edginess to it. Need a bomb behind it. I think Rick Wakeman's got the hardest job. He gets his steps in, doesn't he?
Got to run keyboard to keyboard. Yeah. Yeah, I think when I see that, it's always weird. He kind of plays it just kind of flapping his hand. Somehow hits all the right keys.
It seems to hit it, here rather than on his finger.
Which is, and unless he's old now and he's got
arthritis,
slightly problem hands, so he's changed how he hits. But it's literally like he's flapping his hand around. Somehow it all comes out right. Yeah. Whereas for me, it just get random, like it would even if I was trying, because I haven't got a clue. But yeah, so I think part of that is why I was thinking, trying to put the song into context. I think about where it sits. This is 1971. People have not heard this stuff before, and so they were inventing it, and the fact that you've heard it since is almost like its legacy is that other bands are going, yeah, we could do something like that. I like that, and then we can, because everyone's influenced by somebody, aren't they? I guess, and I'm sure these guys would say, yeah, we were influenced by whoever. Like I say, I don't know, and which is why you still hear this stuff, I think, in songs now, and maybe someone's made it more metal or play it faster or whatever. Now, I mean, I picked this song because one, I really like it, but two, it's much easier to swallow than some of the other stuff, which is really, really proggy. If you want to go and blow your mind, go and find Tales from Topographic Oceans, which is literally a double album of almost one continuous piece of music. It might as well be. So it's just, that's like from another planet. There's a song on Fragile called Roundabout, which I was just wandering about the house, I don't know, last year or whatever, and suddenly my son put Roundabout by Yes on, and I literally stopped in my tracks. It was like, how on earth do you know what this is? And apparently it was used as the music at the end of a Japanese anime series, and they used this song, and it suddenly, and looked online, and it had got this new lease of life from all of the kids going, hey, listen to this new song I've discovered. It's like, yeah, 1971. So yeah, I think I've kind of exhausted myself and the subject. Oh, a word of warning: don't try and decipher Yes lyrics; you'll just hurt yourself. They're even John Anderson, the singer, introducing this song over the years, has said it's about four different things. It's about being lost in a city, and then another time he says it's about the sun. They couldn't be any more different. Right. So I'm not sure even they knew what they were writing. So some of the lyrics to Yes songs are just like, don't try. Anyway,
I like the solo trading between Rick Wakeman and whoever the guitar player was. That was quite good. If there's not enough oomph behind it, for me, it just meanders, and it just seems like they just turned up for a jam session sometimes. And that's one of the problems I have with all prog, really. I mean, I do like prog. I'm not
navel gazing and
at the extreme side of it, the noodling type of stuff. I could probably take it or leave it. It's when for me that sweet spot is progressive, where it serves the song, rather than progressive for the sake of being noodly and for the sake of it. That makes sense.
And I'm sure people can point to lots of things from the 70s that I haven't mentioned that moved music on. This just seemed like a good opportunity, I suppose, to just talk about that, because it's something that's always it's just in the back of my mind. It's not like I think about it all the time, but I gave it some serious thought about a day ago, and they were the kind of conclusions that I came to. And like I say, I'm not a historian. I'm not an expert on anything, but the time was right, I think, and
yeah, quite a few things came together. Like you say, electronics, the probably the skill of the musician as well, because you'll be able to afford to get a guitar.
Absolutely, yeah. The austerity was over, and people had more stuff. They had more free time.
You could buy a guitar, couldn't you?
Yeah, people had more free time. They had more money. They had more, which is why the '60s were swinging, because a whole new generation suddenly had more stuff, and you had all of the older people complaining about how hard it was in their day. You know, back in my day, we were happy to get a potato.
Complaining about the length of the hair length of the Beatles, which is like just to your ear.
So and that's it. Societal change happened, which allowed. It's a much more complex subject, obviously, than belongs here, but than I could ever go into.
We said this one obviously made an impact and made you look at music differently. I hope you're not going to do mine, which is Invaders by Iron Maiden.
Well, the thing is, why not? Because there's a reason that resonated with you, and it was the right time, maybe in your life. And there is an argument to say that, what about when metal appeared? That's a musical change which has influenced so much since.
Well, it predates this, doesn't it? Black Sabbath stuff, but then they were still poo-pooed by the industry, but they wasn't to write darker stuff than this.
Yeah, I mean, okay. Metal,
but they were doing it for exactly the same reasons these chaps were doing their thing. To push, because they could, and just to push the boundaries of.
And there's some long Black Sabbath songs.
Oh yeah.
so they were progressive in a different, slightly different direction. And I'm not pretending that there was just this band and Pink Floyd, who changed the world. That's not what I'm saying at all. Music changed, and it was because of bands like this. But yeah, other music changed. All sorts of things changed, and society changed, and technology changed, and everything changed. I mean, it really, really did. The modern world is only about 20 years old. Where are we? 2019. Okay, 40 years old. The modern world is not very old, is it?
Yeah.
Before you're back to everything being analog, and electronics changed everything, didn't it? Whether you. I like it. In fact, I wouldn't be talking to you now wherever you are if it wasn't for the fact that everything had changed.
When you were early days of recording, you just used to all play around a mic. When you got multi-layered.
Just get everyone in a room and say go.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Even a 4-track recorder was a boom. When it was invented, so you got multi-layered instruments you can
go back and add another bit later, and so on and so forth. And it's bands like this that took that and said, right, what can we do with it? And I appreciate, it's soft and it meanders around. And this is everything that prog was. It goes wherever it wants for as long as it wants to go there, kind of thing. And you're not going to get any Cookie Monster vocals in 1971.
So they're quite a modern thing. They're only like. The first time I fully heard Cookie or vocals of that style, Venom aside, was Fear Factory.
Right.
When I first heard Demanufacture, it was, something I really heard before. I heard shades of it.
I cannot put my finger on it.
I'm sure it existed in other bands, but for me, it was when Demanufacture, 92, 93. So the growly vocals are a fairly newish thing.
Yeah, I'm sure there were people shouting earlier than that, but not as a style sort of thing. People who just go like to Venom.
It probably came more mainstream, I think,
Yeah.
during the 90s, and arguably towards the...
And you could argue that Cookie Monster vocals have changed metal very easily, because they are everywhere now.
Yeah.
Sometimes they come out in bands you just don't expect them to come out, and then, which is why the internet is still going mad over when they hear a woman do it. It's still new enough that people go, "Oh my god!"
Yeah, true.
You know. Yeah, I think I've probably worn you all down enough. I've certainly worn Paz down. So yeah, let us know what you think. I mean, I'm probably going to put Yes and Heart of the Sunrise in the title of this, so people will appear on the channel to watch this that wouldn't normally. So people are going to be pointing out where I've made any mistakes.
Of course, this is the internet.
This is the internet, yeah. And I like I said at the beginning, I'm not an expert and I'm not a historian, which is why I'm talking in such broad, generalised way. Anyway, let us know what you think, and if you made it this far, see you soon.
There you know.